Howdy, 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 my name is Anashi Sasuke, and as soon as I opened this website, I immediately abruptly remembered how uncomfortable this episode is probably going to be, because we're starting with Infectious Lactation, and there's also things like Noir, Hole Dwellers, Haunter in the Dark, which is probably not a Pokemon, and Joke Bandages. Joke Bandages might be fun, Haunter in the Dark's probably terrifying, Hole Dwellers is probably terrifying, Noir is probably serious, and Infectious Lactation is what we're starting with, so... It's safe. Samples of 686 are to be stored under standard protocols for Class 2 biohazardous liquids in G2 facilities. It's infectious, but not virulent. And that word here means what now? Extremely severe or harmful in its effects, or bitterly hostile. So, it's not poisonous, and it won't attack you. It's just infectious. It can only afflict a new host when taken orally and is not motile or otherwise active. The infectious agent's mechanism of operation is not known. It does not contain appreciable amounts of nucleic acids, or prion activity is not apparent. Due to the large quantities of 686 that are being produced by various test subjects, the principal requirement for this substance is not so much containment as it is disposal. While pasteurization has proven completely effective at sterilizing the infectious agent, whatever its nature, it is recommended that all unneeded stocks of 686 should be incinerated. Human consumption is not recommended by anyone other than designated test subjects. So, 686 is an opaque white liquid consisting of a suspension of lipids and proteins that is indistinguishable from ordinary high-grade dairy milk without detailed analysis. At a biochemical level, there are certain subtle differences. The protein content is much more complex, with most of the peptides so far proving difficult to sequence, and it contains a richer blend of vitamins and minerals than is typical of cow's milk. It was first isolated from cattle at a small-scale commercial dairy farm near Blank. Records indicate that the farm's herd began increasing its milk output and quality to unusually high levels approximately 2 years before the infection managed to make the jump to the farm's human workers and the Foundation became involved. It is not known with certainty whether this farm is where 686 originated from, or if it came in from some other source and was simply first recognized there. The infection increased the host's lactation rate, or if the host is not lactating, causes it to begin doing so. It appears that any mammal is susceptible to infection regardless of gender. The initial symptoms of the disease have a rapid onset but are relatively minor, swelling of mammary tissue causing breast development in males, and increased sensitivity of the nipples in both males and females. On average, a human of either gender in this stage of the disease will produce between 1/2 and 1 liter of milk per day. If this milk is extracted on a regular basis with milking intervals of no less than once every 8 hours, the disease appears to remain stable indefinitely in this state. Milking can be performed with a standard breast pump. If a host is not milked adequately, mammary glands continue to develop. Left unchecked, this development will diverge from normal human growth patterns. Rather than remaining confined to a single pair of breasts, it will begin spreading down the front of the chest and abdomen. Additional pairs of nipples will develop along the way, and the nipples will lengthen and thicken dramatically. The eventual result resembles an enormous fleshy udder stretching along the entire length of the torso, or front of the torso, with between 6 and 8 pairs of teats. A human at this stage can produce upwards of 40 liters of milk per day. This is the maximum extent to which the disease will progress in humans. The metabolic demands of such a large and productive glandular system are considerable, and a human victim in this state will find him or herself preoccupied with eating most of the time. With his or her energy fully devoted to milk production, the victim will often suffer from a general state of mental dullness and docility. Surgical removal of mammary tissue is a temporary measure, as the disease is able to cause regrowth even if all of it is excised. So on the one hand, they can use it to help people who had to have, like, a mastectomy, I think that's the word I want, who had to have their breasts removed from breast cancer. They could use this to grow the breast back. Unfortunately, this would result in the person permanently lactating, and if they don't do something about that every 8 hours, they'll just end up with 8 breasts instead of 2. So, it seems like the only thing this does is just make you lactate if you're a mammal, no matter what your gender is or what particular animal you are. If you're a mammal and you drink this milk, you may or may not grow 8 udder-like breasts and lactate forever. But other than that, the milk is safe, as long as they pasteurize it. And I've never really known what pasteurization actually does. I've never looked into it because there are some things I like to eat and drink that I just don't really want to know where they came from. That being said, Noir. No, noir, not nar. SCP-687 is to be kept in a secured room at Site-15. The room is to contain a desk, with locking drawers, a standard office chair, and a 12-inch analog color television, as well as equipment to record and remotely monitor testing of 687. When not being actively tested, 687-1 is to be powered down and disconnected from its power source, and 3 is to be kept in an anti-static envelope and locked in the top drawer of the desk supporting 1 and 2. 2 should remain attached to 1 to prevent wear on the connecting hardware. When being tested, 1 and 2 are to be plugged into one standard blank USP, or UPS, uninterruptible power supply, that is connected to the facility power grid. UPS is to be replaced after each 100 hours of use. Under no circumstances are Class D personnel to be used for testing of 687 referred to Incident 687-1. Is it here? It does not seem to... Nope, it's here, it's here. Okay. SCP-687-1 is a Commodore 64 home computer built in 1980 blank, serial number S000 blank. Non-invasive examination of the hardware confirms that it has not been obviously modified and all parts appear to be from the original manufacturer. 2 was a Commodore 1541 5.25-inch disk drive built the same year as 1, serial number S000 blank. As with 1, all parts appear original and not obviously modified. If an attempt is made to turn on 2 when it is disconnected or connected to any computer other than 1, it will fail to operate. When 2 is connected to 1, both units appear to perform to the manufacturer's specifications except when loading 3 is specified below. 3 is a 5.25-inch floppy disk without manufacturer's markings. Affixed to the disk is a handwritten label with the word Documents in block capitals. And there it is. Attempts to read this disk with any drive other than 2 results in severe read errors and potential damage to the hardware. Passive scans using redacted inconclusive and produce conflicting data. When 2 is connected to 1, 3 can be loaded into the drive and read like any normal disk. Only one file, noir, is visible to the operating system. This file can be executed by typing load noir, 8, 1. When loading and running the noir program, the heat output of both 1 and 2 increases by 400%, and power consumption will double. Any testing equipment attached to the ports on the computer or drive will experience severe and random voltage spiking. These anomalies do not appear to impact performance or cause any damage to 1 or 2. Once the noir program is loaded, the user is presented with a short graphic stating, "Cracked by the Time Lords." After approximately 1 minute, a title screen appears. The title screen reads Noir, a hard-boiled adventure by Blank Games, copyright 1980 blank. There's no record of Blank Games releasing a game with this title. Pressing the spacebar will launch the game. Noir appears to be a text-based adventure game similar to many other games released about the same time. However, the parser appears to be able to comprehend any intelligible English command, even with some words misspelled. In addition, there seems to be no functional limit to the game's territory, and it will respond to queries about its environment in detail beyond what should be possible, given the data storage limitations of the hardware running the game. The setting of the game will also change based on who's playing. A new player will be placed in a new random environment. A returning player will be placed at whatever point that player sees playing last. All initial environments so far presented by the game have been within urban areas within the United States between the years 1923 and 1942. By using commands look itself and inventory, it has been confirmed that a player's in-game avatar matches the appearance and dress the player had when starting the game. The player's in-game avatar will also possess whatever objects or equipment the player had on their person when starting the game. The game is freeform and gives no obvious clues about how to win. However, it does keep a score that prints after every action. The score can go up or down with no indication of an upper or lower bound. High and low scores to date are blank and negative blank. If a player dies in game, that score is set at 0, and any future command typed by that player during any future game session will receive the response, "You cannot do that, you are dead." No abnormal effects are detectable on a player during gameplay. However, after a game session, the next time the player enters REM's sleep state, they will have an unnaturally vivid dream where they experience the events that occurred during the game. During the dream, the player's perceptions are indistinguishable from reality. Extreme cases will show physical manifestations of injuries suffered within the dream. Examples include one subject who presented with bleeding of the fingernails after dreaming of unsuccessful attempts to escape the trunk of a car driven into the blank river. Another subject who developed severe bruising of the face and strain of the anterior longitudinal ligament after dreaming of being beaten by a hostile police officer. And another subject who presented with partial paralysis after dreaming of being a victim of a 1929 gangland execution in the Chicago garage. Typically, such injuries are transient, even in cases where the dreams ended in fatality. However, severe psychological after effects are likely, and will tend to be more severe than if the dream trauma had actually happened during a waking state. This is in large part due to a lack of volition subjects experiencing the dream and the foreknowledge of what is about to happen to them. All subjects report a complete belief in the reality of the dream world, even knowing they are replaying events from the game. If a subject has died violently in the game, the subsequent dream of the event can be traumatic enough that this belief can foster a delusion that the real world is unreal. Victims of this delusion report being convinced that they are still dreaming or are in purgatory. Both physiological and psychological reactions are not clinically abnormal for the stress the subjects report experiencing within these dreams. Given the experimental evidence of in-game actions having actual historical impact, reference Experiment Log 687A, it is theorized that the dreaming state is a side effect caused by the player's perceptions of the game-directed activity catching up to the present day. So let's see that experiment log. Procedure: subject is provided an unloaded 45 automatic handgun and is told to play the game and issue the command inventory, followed by the command drop gun. Results: the subject's game avatar has an unloaded 45 automatic handgun and inventory of same make and model provided to the subject. The command drop gun results in the gun being left in a dumpster next to the subject's avatar. At this point, the subject is ordered to exit the game. Physical gun is still in subject's possession and surrendered back to the Foundation personnel. On the next day, is it the same person? Immediately after test 5, subject is provided a box of 45 caliber ammunition, then told to resume the game. Subject's game avatar appears in the same place gameplay stopped during prior tests. Subject types pick up gun followed by the inventory command. The subject avatar now has both the gun and ammunition in inventory. The score increases by 10 points after the gun is loaded. Physical gun still in possession of Foundation personnel. Test 7. Subject with in-game possession of a loaded firearm instructed to type command shoot self. Result: game avatar shoots itself. Score was set to 0. All commands entered receive the response. You cannot do that, you are dead. Experiences disappointment but suffers no immediate effect. The following morning, subject evidences considerable distress, showing uncontrolled tremors and weeping. When asked about cause of distress, subject responds, "I couldn't stop myself." Test 15. Is it the same person? Subject with a game avatar occupying the city of blank blank in 1938 is instructed to place a classified ad in the blank gazette reading Dr. Blank is a loser. Result: subject types in command place ad in blank gazette that reads Dr. Blank is a loser. The game parses command and prints 5 pages of narrative and response covering approximately 3 hours of game time, including a bus ride to the blank gazette's offices, small talk with a receptionist, and a discussion with an editor about the content of the ad. Foundation researchers uncover microfiche records of December 1st, 1938 issue of the Blank Gazette containing ad Dr. Blank is a loser. Score increases by 100 points. Given the importance of these results, I will overlook the fact that I am not amused. Dr. Blank. Test 23. Subject with a game avatar occupying the city of Blankety Blank Blank in 1924 is given a first edition hardcover of Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, or Vonnegut, I don't know how to say that, inscribed by Dr. Blank. Once subject is playing game, subject is instructed to go to the blank bank and place an in-game copy of the book in a safety deposit box. Subject attempts to comply but is caught in a crossfire of a gang war. Game avatar dies and score was set to 0. Note: blank blank blank. A routine audit of Foundation archives uncovered SCP blank, an anomalous hardcover edition of Slaughterhouse 5, recovered from a used bookstore in Los Angeles, California in 1947. The book bears a description by Dr. Blank and the additional phrase, "Miss me yet?" written in human blood. Second description is consistent with the handwriting of D67895. Reference Incident 1. SCP blank is reclassified as SCP blank X. And what happened here? D67895, male, 27 years of age, sociopath, convicted of redacted serial killings and redacted. Agents A blank and C blank and research assistant Dr. G blank. That's the personnel involved. Location: containment room of 687. For a period of 2 weeks, Disposable Dude 67895 had been extremely cooperative with Foundation personnel and had logged 25 hours of gameplay covering approximately 2 months of in-game time during January and February 1934 in Cleveland, Ohio. They prove highly intelligent and adaptable, using the sophistication of the game's parser to complete very complex tasks with 1 or 2 commands. Permission granted to allow them to read newspapers of the era, as well as retain paper and writing implements to take notes. 3 days before scheduled monthly termination, they were brought in for a routine scheduled session with 687. Halfway into the session, they typed the following unauthorized command: do everything written on page 1. Upon entering the command, approximately 150 pages of narrative text are printed on screen. Dr. G blank, observing remotely, orders immediate end to the session and initiates containment breach protocols. Agents A blank and C blank in the room with the Disposable Dude attempt to restrain the subject and remove him from contact with 687. He laughs, saying, "Too late, boys!" With the narrative text, when the narrative text completes printing, data expunged. Aside from SCP blank X, no trace of Agent blank, Agent A blank, Agent C blank, or disposable dude have been recovered from the Foundation to date. Good lord, did no one even think to look at the history of Cleveland in the mid-30s and compare it to their record? Can someone please Google torso? Dr. Blank. This might be worse than that. If 687 does rewrite history, it's quite possible that the torso murders, or redacted for that matter, might not have even existed before the security breach. Do we have any way to know? From this point forward, no Class Ds are allowed near this thing. Okay then. So that brings us to Hole Dwellers. I don't know what I thought Noir was going to be, but that is not what I was expecting. But I was right about it being messed up. I was certainly right about that. Anyway, 688 is active in the wild. What was it called again? Hole Dwellers. Specimens are retrieved by Mobile Task Force Theta 13 land sharks. Are they Langoliers? Is that a Langolier? That looks like a Langolier. As uncontained nests are identified. A nested 688 should be retrieved in darkness by agents provided with night vision equipment, not night lights, and should be moved only by removal of the entire nest, including whatever physical structures required to keep the nesting area closed and intact. The nest will be enclosed in an opaque light-proof container and be transferred and installed in the 688 warehouse facility at site someplace. The warehousing facility shall provide an open area of at least 5,000 square meters protected from outside illumination, and each 688 nest contained within shall be covered with a secondary light-proof enclosure that should only be removed for testing and feeding of 688. Each individual 688 will be fed in an amount and on schedule as specified by the researcher in charge, though biomass fed to 688 should include at least 25% living tissue to discourage it from abandoning its nest. These criteria can be waived for testing at the discretion of the site director. So, SCP-688 is an animate, apparently living entity that shares many gross morphological similarities with chestnut lamprey, Ichthyomyzon castaneus. However, it differs in several key respects, has no extrasensory organs, gills, or cloacal openings. It is also much larger and varies considerably more in size, ranging from 10 centimeters to over 200 centimeters in length. It is also found in a more varied habitat and has been found as far south as Redacted and as far north as Redacted, above ground in burrows and as well as underwater. Unlike Ichthyomyzon castaneus, 688 is an ambush predator rather than a parasite. That's making my skin tingle. It will inhabit a nesting site that conceals its body from the light and anchor its mouth to an external opening. While in the nesting site, it does not move and will consume all biological matter that enters the opening. These nesting sites can be naturally occurring or man-made, as long as there is limited light exposure and some minimal biological matter entering on a periodic basis. The more biological matter, the greater 688's tolerance for some illumination. No example of 688 has been discovered outside of an active nesting site, and it is unknown how or even if these entities move in the wild or how they find sites to nest in. To date, nests have been discovered in animal burrows, fissures and rock formations, hollow logs, drainage pipes, gutters, downspouts, garbage disposal, shoes, and other articles of clothing, inside the engine block of abandoned Buick Sentry, and inside Redacted. I can only assume that's inside of a corpse. Once any biological matter enters the mouth, inward curving teeth will seize it and pull it into its digestive tract with enough force to pull in prey substantially larger than either 688's apparent size or the diameter size of its nesting site. Matter seized by 688 has proved impossible to retrieve. It will continue pulling on it until it forces the entire prey organism through the nest opening. A 68 kilogram Great Dane was observed being pulled through a 20 centimeter pipe in less than 3 seconds. Or until the prey organism's body suffers mechanical separation from the part being consumed. During an experiment, one disposable dude placed her index finger into an infected light socket. In 1.8 she lost her left arm to the elbow and suffered a degloving injury up to the shoulder, at which point her elbow joint separated and she fell back from the nesting site. I don't want to know what a degloving injury means, but I can probably guess, but I'm not going to guess out loud. 688 is able to ingest an apparently unlimited amount of organic material without excreting, changing in size, or gaining any mass. This is apparently due to a digestive system that leads to an extra-dimensional organism. This also leads to 688's novel method of escaping from perceived threats. If exposed to bright light or if dislodged from its nesting site, its mouth will retreat inside, pulling its outer skin after itself. After it does this, its body will appear to reduce in volume in a manner that has been described as an empty balloon turning inside out, or a sock rolling in on itself. This will continue until it disappears completely. Such events under Foundation control are considered containment breaches and will be disciplined if not occurring as part of an approved experiment. Recovery log. August 8th, 19-something, Foundation agents became aware of a possible SCP active in blank, Mexico, when they intercepted police reports of several violent deaths. The victims were all male and, with the exception of one decapitation, shared similar injuries. So, the victims were all male, and with the exception of one decapitation, their genitals have been forcibly removed along with several pounds of other tissue. In one case, the missing tissue included the prostate, bladder, kidneys, and several feet of intestine, causing death by exsanguination. I can probably guess what happened there. The investigating agents traced the victims to a local brothel where it was determined that the victims redacted. When confronted, Mrs. Blank admitted to killing the men, showed no remorse, and claimed redacted. The investigating agents were not immediately aware of the possibility of 688 involvement and captured her in accordance with standard protocols for medium-risk humanoid SCP recovery. Once in Foundation custody, examination discovered a 28cm long SCP-688 had nested within Mrs. Blank, partly displacing and distending the uterus. Mrs. Blank could not provide any insight into its origins. It has been theorized that because Mrs. Blank is postmenopausal and therefore does not run as high a risk of infection from blockage of the birth canal, she may be able to survive the 688 infestation indefinitely. The site director has authorized testing this hypothesis. With restraint, sedation, and periodic feeding, Mrs. Blank has survived for the past blank years. Are they talking about periodic feeding to her, or periodic feeding to the thing inside of her vagina? Because even with all the blanks and redacteds, it's obviously inside of her vagina. Which is messed up, and also what I was suggesting, like, the one thing that it might be in, like, nesting inside of people, when it said redacted, and I said inside of people, but I said inside of corpses, and they recovered it inside of a live person who was using it to eat dudes on purpose! Anyway, now it's time for Haunter in the Dark. Part opposed to Gengar that couldn't even let me finish making the bad Pokemon joke. Couldn't even let me finish the bad Pokemon joke. Let me drink some water, and then I'll do the serious Keter voice, since I didn't do the serious Keter voice in the last episode. Apologies for the ambient fan noises, and also if you, like, heard the bottle, it was fighting me on actually closing. So, SCP-689 is to be contained in a large concrete chamber equipped with high-intensity sodium iodide lights. These lights must be wired to separate redundant circuits such that 689 is brightly illuminated at all times. At least 3 personnel must be on duty at all times within the containment facility. 2 Class D inside the chamber and 1 Level 2 or higher at the operator's station outside the chamber. The operator must either be completely blind or be fitted with a visored helmet sufficient to block all vision, which must not be removed for the duration of his shift. Under absolutely no circumstances is the operator to look into the chamber. The Class D observers must between them keep 689 in view at all times without exception. Blinking, etc. is allowed as normal, but there must be at least 1 set of eyes focused on it at all times. If the lights go out inside the chamber at any time for any reason, or if there is any interruption in observation, all currently extant personnel who have seen 689 must be executed without delay. It is recommended that they be fitted with remotely activated kill devices triggerable from the containment control room. If SCP-689 is known to have left the chamber at any time, retrieval teams consisting of blind or visored personnel equipped with echolocators along with Class D observers must be dispatched to the location of all personnel who have previously viewed 689. Retrieval teams will establish an immediate perimeter and cover the object before returning it to the chamber as quickly as possible. While 689 is in transit, Class A observers will stand under the covering and keep it in view at all times. Any level 1 or below personnel who have seen 689 as a result of a containment breach are to be terminated immediately. Hire clears personnel who will be temporarily retained, but in the event of another containment failure are to be terminated. Request to study 689 must be submitted to Dr. Blank at least 7 days in advance with a detailed description of the proposed experiment and justification. Any researcher directly viewing 689 should be aware that doing so renders them liable to immediate and summary termination in the event of any containment or light failure as described above. Description: SCP-689 appears to be a small green soapstone statue, 30 centimeters in height. It is carved in the semblance of what appears to be an unknown deity of the underworld, a seated skeletal figure with hands clasped over knees. It was discovered by Blank Blank during one of the pre-war German archaeological expeditions in the Blank area of India, and obtained after the war by the OSS. Its location during the war is unknown. SCP-689 is completely inert for as long as it is being watched by at least one human being. Normal behaviors such as blinking do not appear to interrupt the watching for this purpose, but any lapse in attention, however momentary, renders the observer vulnerable. As soon as it is unobserved, it vanishes from its current location. Within 15 to 20 seconds, one person who has previously viewed 689 dies instantaneously, 689 reappearing on top of their remains. If no previous viewers are presently alive, it reappears in the same place as previous. Tests have established that this effect is not operative on non-humans, but that any human being who has ever directly viewed 689 is potentially vulnerable. No consistent cause of death has been found, with autopsy results ranging from heart attacks and strokes to complete rupture of all internal organs. The mechanism by which the victim is selected is currently unknown, save that preference seems to be given to persons in crowds or otherwise surrounded by large numbers of people, presumably to increase the number of people viewing the statue. Recorded images of 689 do not appear to have this property. Due to the potential for a chain reaction, once 689 is allowed to leave the chamber, it is considered absolutely critical that all personnel who have seen the object be terminated immediately on any lapse in observation. Addendum: those with level 2 security clearance should see Document B. Document B proposed experiment with 682. Following the failure of other options and given the priority accorded to termination of 682, Drs. Blank and Blank have proposed that 682 be deliberately exposed to 689, presumably by turning off the lights or a similar measure. 689 staff caution that in the event of a deliberate observation failure, all personnel who have seen 689 other than the intended target must be either terminated in advance or placed in the containment chamber with the intended subject to ensure that the object does not escape containment. Given the apparently random nature of the selection process, it is also likely that multiple trials will be required before the target came under attack. Staff recommends that if such an option is activated, all Class D personnel must be terminated in advance of the attempt to improve chances of success. So, I do remember them mentioning 689 be used on 682. I think it was either on the TV Tropes page or in the entry for 682 itself. And I guess how that test went will be in that test log, which will be hitting in the next SCP Saturday. So that brings us to joke bandages. I wonder why that was called it was probably called Haunter in the Dark because if it's in the dark you die. So Euclid 690 is to be stored in a refrigerated locked container in Sector 7 Euclid SCP containment with a temperature no greater than 10 degrees Celsius. Access to 690 is restricted to personnel with level 2 access or higher. Restricted? Experiments involving 690 must be approved by an individual holding level 4 clearance before testing commences. Personnel with any cuts, scratches, or other injuries of the skin are to be restricted from access to 690. If unauthorized personnel use a bandage from 690, security personnel are to be called immediately to subdue the offending personnel and then remove and dispose of the bandage as biological waste. Description: 680 appears to be a standard box of commercially available adhesive bandages now containing 47 bandages. The logo on the box states that its contents are anti-bandages box of 64 for the practical joker, and that they are supplied by your friends at the factory. Of course it's the factory. Why wouldn't it be the factory? Why wouldn't the factory make anti-bandages? What does it do? When a bandage from 690 is applied to a wound, it will prevent the wound from healing naturally, aggravating the wound and causing infection. Analysis of the bandages has revealed that this is not the result of anomalous properties. The bandages are composed of asbestos and fiberglass, and impregnated with microcapsules which dissolve upon exposure to body heat. The microcapsules contain a mixture of highly concentrated anticoagulants, heparin, pyridine, and brodifacoum, and particularly virulent but not anomalous strains of Streptococcus Yersinia, and Staphylococcus, and Clostridium. I don't know what some of those are, but I know it's bad. So strep throat, and staph infection, and I don't know what the other two are. The anomalous property of 690 is that they impose a moderate compulsion on nearby injured humans to take a bandage and apply it to their wound, regardless of the wound severity. Furthermore, once the bandage is applied, the affected user will believe that the bandage is helping heal their wound and will refuse to remove it. The compulsion is not strong enough to provoke violence, however. Affected personnel have been quite persistent in their efforts to use or keep using 690. Let's check out the test log for further details. But first, when first discovered, it contained 64 bandages. Following containment, 17 have been removed and used for experiments. And those experiments are... let's see. Forward, Subject D received a paper cut on his index finger while reviewing his orientation leaflet. He was given one strip of 690 and quickly applied it to his finger. Every 5 minutes, he was questioned about his injury and the strip temporarily removed to observe. 5 minutes. Felt fine. Wound failed to close, causing an abnormal loss of blood for a paper cut. 10 minutes. Asked if he noticed any changes. Claimed to feel better. Slight redness and irritation around the area where it was applied. 15 minutes. Noted to continuously scratch the area around it. When questioned about the itching, responded with it's part of the healing process. Skin began to rise up around the wound. Subject began to show the first symptoms of staph infection. 20 minutes. Subject was alerted that he may be suffering from staph infection. Simply ignored the observers. Finger continued to swell and a small amount of pus began to leak from the wound. Seemed irritated when taking off the strip. 25 minutes. Offered medical attention for his wound. Denied and again claimed he was just fine. Began to secrete fluids from the wound which leaked through the strip. Swelling noted to accelerate. 30 minutes. Began to become distressed due to his constant observation. Requested to be alone. Denied. Swelling and moisture on the subject's skin caused the strip of 690 to fall off. The strip was reapplied and the subject's finger was wrapped with gauze. 35 minutes. He was asked to take off the bandage, which he refused. Observers alerted the subject that he would be terminated if he did not comply. Continued to refuse. Observer had to take the bandage off and was met with little resistance. Testing concluded. NA. The post-experiment subject asked for another bandage before termination. Why is the factory so terrible? Why is the factory so terrible? I recognize that it was one of the possibilities of SCP-1. I do remember how messed up that was. It was a very, very terrible place. Everything about the factory is horrible. That's why whenever I'm reading an SCP entry and I see the factory and I just freeze, it's because I just remember how terrible of a place that was, and I know that as soon as I see the words, the factory, it's gonna be fucked up. That's just how it is, for everything. So, this has been Anashi Sasuke. This is episode 147 of Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the next episode, we're going to be checking out A Coward's Way Out, Revives the Colors, Naughty Stalker, All the Time in the World, and Eels. So, if you like this, I'd like to subscribe, would be groovy. If you didn't, you need to do either one of those things, and I will see y'all in the next one. Later!